Welcome to the Week 6 Columbia Football Coaches Show presented by Amity Hall Uptown. I'm Lance Meadow here on GoColumbiaLions.com as Columbia resumes Ivy League play. A quick turnaround Friday night in Hanover, New Hampshire against the Dartmouth Big Green. As always, we're joined by head coach John Poppe. John, let's first recap last week's setback against Penn, 35-21. And I think for most people, if they didn't even watch the game and they saw that you had 3 takeaways, you were +2 in turnover differential, your quarterback threw for over 300 yards. I'm naming a lot of positives that you were in position to perhaps win that game. So looking back, what overshadowed all of those factors that I just listed in your mind from last week's game?
Yeah, just not finishing drives, right? And only scoring 14 points off the 2 takeaways instead of 21. And we're driving and we had a turnover of our own that gave them kind of momentum back. And that turnover occurred on a 2nd and 1, which you don't want. And that's really where I felt the game was. It's an explosive offense. We didn't have to score points, so we wanted to be aggressive, and that's where those 4th down situations were so crucial that we didn't capitalize on where we missed.
In terms of some bright spots, a lot of your young players have been stepping up as of late. Beckett Robinson, first career touchdown. Same thing for Michael Walters, who returned from injury. And my goodness, Titus Evans seemed to catch everything that was thrown his way. I mean, what has impressed you the most in terms of the work ethic of some of these young guys and how what you're seeing in practice is at least starting to transfer over to games? Yeah,
these younger guys, the hunger to play and to be an impact, right? They're always proving themselves kind of every day that they belong on the field on Saturdays. And we knew coming in, some of these guys were ready to go, especially Beckett being a first year. We kind of first day of training camp, he's making some plays and running by some people, and we knew he was going to be a factor once he got healthy. And then with Hutch, we were really excited about some of the things he showed in between an injury-riddled freshman year, just been able to run the routes. He was leading the state of Texas in receiving, the entire state in receiving his senior before an injury cut his season short. And then Titus has been steady, and we were hoping he would take this stride, and he has not disappointed in any way, shape, or form. But just their work ethic is really what has separated these 3 in terms of doing what they did this past Saturday.
Yeah, it certainly says a lot when you lead the state of Texas in receiving. A lot of good players coming out of that state. I don't need to remind you. I look at turning points every week with you, and John, the one thing that came to my mind is you get Penn's punter to take a knee, right? Game-changing play here. You take over at the Quakers' 29-yard line, and it's a 1-score game. And unfortunately, you go 4 and out, and then what happens on the very next play? They run a screen to Jared Richardson. He takes it to the house. You're nodding your head because sometimes, hey, that's just what the football gods have in store. But looking back, what were you unable to capitalize after that turnover on downs by Penn's punter, and how much do you think the game really changed trajectory as a result of what I just laid out there?
Yeah, it was huge. It's a 14-point swing.
Yeah.
We had the first down, we had the trick play. It was there. We just didn't finish that play. And we come back down, running on 2nd down, and Michael Walters makes a good cut, and then just maybe misses that secondary cut that gets that to be a 3rd and 2, or maybe he breaks a tackle and runs through. And so those are kind of those little moments in just those 2 downs where you have a chance to be really successful, and we weren't. And that's where you're trying to focus on the positives. Hey guys, look at this picture. Look what we have the opportunity to do here. And now we just have to continue to finish. And that's really what the story has been in terms of that drive, finishing there. On the 3rd down, we throw an incomplete. And the 4th down, obviously, we throw a completion for a short gain to Michael Walters, and then the incomplete. And that's really just kind of been our inconsistencies this season. It was defined us. And that's where we as coaches got to just continue to go back to work as a program and continue to build on those positives by acknowledging where our mistakes, our shortcomings have been.
Well, Caleb Sanchez was running your offense last week after missing the last few games with a shoulder injury and clearly made a number of plays over 300 yards. What did you see out of him that could now open things up maybe even more now that he's starting to build steam because he had been sidelined for a little bit of time?
Hey, just similar to the things he showed last year. Just a confidence and poise in the pocket, the ability to distribute the football, right? And his sense of timing. He does a good job of stepping up in the pocket and then getting to his outlet or allowing his receivers to make plays. And that's really what was a major difference to his success last Saturday is he did all those things more often than not. And that's why we're excited to have him healthy and continue to move forward as an offense this week versus a very challenging Dartmouth team.
Well, speaking of Dartmouth, we're going to get more into them a little bit later on, but I want to stay on the quarterback subject, John, because a theme, at least the last 2 weeks, has been you've been challenged by mobile quarterbacks who like to run. Hayden Johnson for Lehigh, Liam O'Brien last week. He had an 18-yard run, and there was one drive where he only had one pass attempt, which was incomplete, right? And they went 10 plays, 75 yards, all run plays. How much is that now yet another point of emphasis, given what Dartmouth is going to present? And what in your mind needs to be tweaked to better contain these dual threat type of quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, that was a well-designed drive by Penn. Just coming out of the second half and saying, we're going to establish a mindset here, you know, and that's where we as coaches got to be better in terms of where we're positioning our players or pieces at the point of attack for an opponent offense. And we had a couple of misfits in the gaps, and is that guy's pressing? Is that guy's having bad eye discipline? Doesn't matter. We as coaches got to get it corrected, and that's where a major focus for us this week has been making sure our guys understand every element of run play and where we fit in our base defense. And that's for us a huge part of how we move forward and hopefully finish this season. And if you have a guy in every gap and you're playing physical football and you're doing it the right way with your hand placement and eyes, those runs don't get out. And that's really where we got to be great in our pass rush lanes, knowing that quarterback runs can also happen on scrambles, especially with this upcoming week.
Sure.
We got to be really disciplined in our pass rush lanes and making sure a guy just can't run straight at full speed.
The other thing that has been a trend has been you being tested against top wide receivers, right, in the FCS, in terms of Jameel for Lehigh, Jared Richardson, we know, as advertised, and wound up with 3 touchdowns. Dartmouth maybe a little bit more spread the wealth type of team, but they still have a true number one. What have you seen out of your secondary, and how much does these challenges that, John, come up week to week help this young group better become adjusted to rising up to what's not going to get any easier the duration of the season and for years to come here?
Yeah, failures, right, or failures unless you continue to learn, right? So we got to make sure that that individual failure doesn't continue to be a consistent failure, right, an ultimate failure. So we got to make sure as coaches we're building them up every moment we get and continue to coach them and preach the good things that they're doing, emphasize the good things, and then here's where you can be a little bit better, right? Here's where it's 3rd and 12, right? We don't need you pedaling to 26 yards, right? And that's where those growing moments, there's growing pains, but there's excitement with Caleb Solomon, right? Delivering a great hit on a 2nd and long or 1st and long play. There's an interception he catches. There's a forced fumble by Jeremiah Douglas on the quarterback run. So there's things that they're doing and making plays, and now we just got to have more consistency in situational football. So really excited about how they've been tested and their mindset just to grow and learn and embrace the challenges that they face so far.
Only sophomores in terms of what you're working with in the secondary, so there's going to be some growing pains from that perspective. On the topic of wide receivers, Titus Evans is no slouch. He's done his fair share of heavy lifting, led the team in receiving last week against Penn, leads the team on the season. We'll step aside. We're going to feature him, get to know the ins and outs of Columbia's number 1 wide receiver, and when we come back, we'll explore Dartmouth and the next challenge that lies ahead for the Lions here in Week 6 on the Columbia Football Coaches Show, presented by Amity Hall Uptown.
Amity Hall Uptown is the premier sports destination on the Upper West Side and the official home to Columbia University Athletics. Located just 951 steps from campus, Amity Hall is and will always be your home away from home.
Hi, I'm Victoria Newsom, and I'm joined by number 85, Titus Evans, a wide receiver for Columbia football. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for joining me. We're going to go into your performance so far this season. You have 27 receptions for 389 yards and a touchdown, and you average around 14 yards per catch. Can you talk about your growth and how you see yourself this season?
Yeah, I think I made a big jump from sophomore to junior year. I think just, all the work I put in the off season, the times grinding, by myself and with fellow receivers like Hutch Crow has helped me out a lot. And I'm seeing that result on the field. And like I said, I'm not really a big picture type of guy. Didn't have a lot of goals going into the season. Just really taking it one game at a time, 1 week at a time, one practice at a time.
And one game at a time, and those goals that you don't have for the long term, but for right now, what do you think your team needs most?
I think, honestly, just attention to detail and focusing on the small things. That's really the main thing that's hurting us. And so I feel like once we lock in on that and, execute when our number is getting called, we can change this thing.
And for making the most of each opportunity, how have you seen that from the start of the season to now? I know there's been limited opportunities, but for you, you have the chance to work with different quarterbacks, different dynamics. Can you build on that?
Yeah, I think as far as the different quarterbacks, and I feel we put the work in all season in the winter and in the spring, to build that chemistry. So no matter whose number is getting called, that we're all ready to make a play and put the product that we want on the field.
And in terms of product on the field, what product are you looking forward to put on this weekend and the weekend after that?
Yeah, I think from an offensive standpoint, we had a pretty solid game against Penn. It was just about finishing and key downs and key red zone plays, and so I'm looking forward to how we respond this week, all week of practice, and just locking in on the small details and executing at a high level when your number's getting called.
How would you describe your play to someone who hasn't had the opportunity to watch you? What would you say about yourself?
Yeah, if I was describing it to a stranger, I would say I'm a deep threat, a physical receiver that I like to win one-on-one matchups. I feel like I go against the best DB in practice every day with Carter McRae. And so I'm able to, go against the best, and I feel like iron sharpens iron. So he helps my game out a lot, and yeah.
And in shaping your game, can we just go back a little bit and talk about where you're from? So you're from Dallas. How do you even find yourself here at Columbia University?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in, God has a plan for everyone. So obviously from Dallas, I wasn't expecting to be in New York City, but like I said, God had a plan for me. And so the way my recruiting cycle just played out, Columbia was the best option. And, I'm more than happy to be here.
Is there anything you want to say to fans who have the opportunity to come out and support Columbia football for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know this is not what we expected this season, throughout the first 5 games and the result that we wanted. But we can assure you and promise you that we're doing our best to, fix our problems and go out there and put the product that we know that y'all deserve to see.
Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you so
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
Amity Hall Uptown is the premier sports destination on the Upper West Side and the official home to Columbia University Athletics. Located just 951 steps from campus, Amity Hall is and will always be your home away from home.
Welcome back to the Columbia Football Coaches Show presented by Amity Hall Uptown. Lance Meadow with John Poppe here as we now look ahead to the matchup against Dartmouth Friday night in Hanover, New Hampshire. So Dartmouth has won its last 2 games, John, and they have held their opponents to under 20 points. They beat Yale 16 and then Fordham non-conference 13 points. So I want to start with the defense. What are you seeing on film? That's a pretty nice average production over the last 2 weeks that is going to put your offense to the test this week.
The same thing you see from every Dartmouth defense, as long as Don Dobes has been coordinated, which is a violent line of scrimmage play, right? Guys that are very, very strong and stout, right? A very smart secondary in terms of reducing the opportunities for big plays, and then linebackers that understand how to fit off their defensive line. They're very, very quick to the run gaps, and this is where we've got to be great at taking what they give us, being efficient and moving the chains, and not getting greedy, not getting flustered because we're only getting 4 or 5 yard gains. That's the kind of style of play that these games typically are with Dartmouth, and that's where we've just got to be confident that we're doing the right thing by moving the football at 4 or 5 and 6 yard chunks.
I'm glad you brought up the trenches because you look at the statistics, they're number 2 in rushing the football in the Ivy League. They're number 2 in defending the run, which is no surprise. It's the offensive line and the defensive lines. You talked about the history with respect to the track record and the coaching staff. How much has that just been an overall blueprint for the Big Green? I mean, you've been in this league for many years that no matter the personnel they bring in, you're always going to be in for a dogfight. And if you don't win up front, it's going to be a very long afternoon or a long night under these circumstances.
Yeah, they graduated the people they graduated last year, right? And all of a sudden they got guys that look the same. And so that, I think that's a testament to their weight room, right? And what they're doing in the off season and just who they're recruiting, right? And obviously we're all trying to compete for the same young men across the country, and it seems like Dartmouth has done a great job of maybe not taking the splashiest or flashiest guy out of high school, but developing very, very well and again, creating strength in the weight room. And so that's really what has been, I think, a blueprint for them. And they, Don Dobes coaching the linebackers, their guys just seem to always know where to fit, right? And play off their defensive linemen very, very well. And that's where they're kind of unpredictable, is that a linebacker might fit here where you expect them to fit here just based on the ball carrier. And they're very instinctual football players and how they're coached.
as well as their quarterback, as we go back to what we talked about earlier with the theme of playing yet another mobile quarterback who is number 2 on the team in rushing yardage, and that's Grayson, their starting quarterback, who, clearly has been in the mix within their scheme. He's not necessarily new, but what is the challenge again when you see a quarterback who, he had a 400-yard passing game earlier this season, so he's been giving them some pluses through the air, but at the same time, he can set the tempo on the ground, and how you go about limiting that damage.
Yeah, in the quarterback design run games, it's not letting him be explosive, right? He's going to get some yards here or there, but you watch the Penn touchdown, the first one of the day, I mean, he runs for 20, I think, yards, and he's relatively untouched. And so we got to make sure we're playing with a physical presence of our own up front. We got to do a much better job of our eyes on the second level to make sure we're fitting the appropriate gaps and tracking the ball carrier the right way. And tackling, right? That's part of it. And then when the pass game shows, making sure he can't just sprint straight, right? You watch a clip in the Yale game and he takes off for one of their touchdowns and there's no one there. We cannot have those instances. We have to be smarter where we're putting people in our zone coverages, right, in the underneath zones, so there can be a second level of rush. And our D-line can't just rush the passer and rush beyond them. Like, we have to make sure we're compressing and force him to at least start and stop his feet as he breaks through.
John, it seems as if his presence on the ground and their conventional backs is a big reason why they're tops in the Ivy League in third down conversion rate. Now, you and I have talked about your struggles on that side of the ball, opposite end of the spectrum, eighth. How much could this game come down to who is better equipped to continue these drives and execute on third down? And I'm not trying to make it simplistic, but it just seems as if there's trends that you could see with your team versus what their team has brought to the table.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency this week in terms of first and second down and to get you to a manageable third down, and then executing when you need to, right? And that's where they're getting to those 3rd and 2s and 3s a lot, and 3rd and 1s a lot. There hasn't been many 3rd and 10 pluses for this team, and that's where we have to do a great job defensively, is getting them off rhythm, right, off schedule, and keeping them there. And obviously for us, like I said, we got to be confident that we're doing the right things as an offensive unit, getting 4 to 5 yard chunks. We're not getting the 12 or 20 yard gains, but we're getting the consistent 4 to 5s, just being happy with that and making sure we move the chains.
Because you can be methodical moving up and down the field, and you can wear down their defense and obviously rest your own defense. Now, the other facet that's important to bring up when we're talking about Dartmouth is their kicker, Owen Zalk, who kicked a 51-yarder to beat Yale 17-16. He's been the special teams player of the week each of the last 2 weeks. I mean, I know you're read up on all this stuff. I'm not telling you anything new, just the audience. But field positioning and maybe their choices in when they're willing to bring out their kicker, what does that do mindset-wise for your defense this week?
Yeah, points are at premium, right? They are, and that's where they've had Owen Zalk's been as great as soon as he entered the league, and there were some situations, actually even Yale, he missed 2 field goals, which I know he's upset about and he's working on, but we just got to make sure that if we're forcing them to kick field goals, okay, we have a shot to at least get 3 points of our own. We got to make sure we're doing a much better job in the red zone of forcing those field goal opportunities if Dartmouth's offense gets in there. And that's where the key of this game could be. It could come down, if it's cold night and there's a little bit of wind, it might come down to a field goal. So we got to make sure we're doing a great job of at least forcing those. So if our offense is driving, we at least maybe can push the ball in for a touchdown, right, and change the complexion of the game that way.
Never know what Mother Nature is going to call for when it comes to Hanover, New Hampshire. Before I let you go, John, you're trying to end this 3-game skid. It's a young team we've talked about throughout the season. I would say sometimes a young team doesn't know any better, right, because they're new to college football, they're new to the ebbs and flows. How has the team taken to the fact that the last few games have not gone according to plan, and you've been knocking on the door, but you just haven't been able to finish? What has been the mindset as you've gone through the course of this last few weeks, really?
Yeah, that's why football can't be a result-driven sport, right? It's got to be a process-driven sport, knowing we spend 90+% of our time working for the one opportunity we get, right, on Saturdays, and that's throughout the course of the year. And our seniors have been awesome, right? And we're trying to do as a program, not just seniors-driven, but underclassmen-driven, win for these seniors. And that's why practice has been awesome. Like, there has been no let up. There's no frustration on our players' end. It's just, we have to be better in how we're working, our attention to detail, the finer points of this game. And I think that's what, having some younger guys in there is that hunger to continue to grow and get better. Not just for the seniors, there's some ego to that too, because they know they're great players and can be great players, and they can't be satisfied with what they've done, knowing it hasn't produced the results we want as a program. So it's been awesome how the competitiveness has been in terms of offense, defense, special teams, and how we're practicing. And now we just got to be smarter in how we're playing and coaching to make sure we're making those plays in those game-changing moments.
And that quest will continue as you look ahead to this matchup with Dartmouth. John, it's always a pleasure.
Lance,
greatly appreciate the time and the insight. Best of luck. The game is Friday night in New Hampshire, as we mentioned. You can watch it on ESPNU. It'll be a 6 p.m. Eastern kickoff. As this has been the Week 6 Columbia Football Coaches Show presented by Amity Hall Uptown.